Kicked out at 17. We bought a worn-down shack for $5, and everything changed. Nathan felt his heart race when he heard the shouts coming from the living room. His stepfather, Frank, was upset again, arguing about the money that had gone missing from the family safe. "I know it was one of you two," Frank yelled, pointing a finger toward the brothers. $60 don't just vanish." Nathan looked at his younger brother, Caleb, who was trembling beside him in the hallway. At 17, Nathan had always taken on the role of protector since they lost their mother 3 years ago. Caleb, just 15, still carried innocence in his eyes, but also the fear of another outburst from their stepfather. "Frank, please, let's talk calmly." Nathan tried to mediate, but was interrupted by a hand slamming the table. "Talk, nothing. You think I'm a fool? That money was to pay the electric bill." The truth burned in Nathan's chest. He had taken the money, yes, but not for himself. In the final days of his mother's life, as she lay suffering in the hospital, Nathan sold his own belongings and even took hidden money to buy the expensive medicine she needed. Medicine that the health insurance didn't cover. Medicine that might have given Mrs. Martha a few more days of life. But he never told anyone, not even Caleb. The guilt of not saving his mother was already a heavy enough burden to carry alone. "If you don't give me that money back by tomorrow, you two can find somewhere else to live," Frank threatened, his eyes red with anger. Nathan felt the floor fall away from under him. Caleb grabbed his arm, whispering an apology that made no sense. "It wasn't Caleb, Frank. If anyone took it, it was me." "Ah, so you admit it." Frank stepped closer, his breath heavy with alcohol invading the space between them. "And where's my money?" "I don't have it anymore." The silence that followed was more frightening than the shouts. Frank looked at the two brothers as if seeing them for the first time, and Nathan realized something had definitively changed in that moment. "Then it's decided. Tomorrow morning I want you both out of my house." "Frank, they're just kids." The neighbor, Mrs. Gable, tried to intervene, having appeared at the door upon hearing the argument. "Kids who steal don't deserve a roof," he replied, turning his back. That night, Nathan couldn't sleep. He kept watching Caleb, who had finally fallen asleep after crying softly for hours. How would he protect his brother on the streets? Where could they go? When the sun rose, Nathan had already made his decision. He took the few savings he kept in an old can under the bed, just $12, and woke Caleb gently. "Come on, bro, it's time." "Where are we going?" asked Caleb, still sleepy. "We're going to find our place," Nathan lied, trying to project a confidence he didn't feel. They packed their clothes into an old backpack and left before Frank woke up. The street was empty, only a few workers already heading to their jobs. Nathan held Caleb's hand, and they began walking with no set destination. "Nate, do you think Frank will change his mind?" Caleb asked after a few blocks. Nathan looked back one last time, watching the house they had lived in for the last 3 years grow smaller and smaller. There was no going back. "I don't know, Caleb, but we're going to be okay, I promise." It was a promise he didn't know if he could keep, but it was all he could offer at that moment. They walked for hours through the small rural town. Nathan knew every street, every corner, but now everything seemed different. They were no longer boys heading home, they were two aimless young men searching for a home. Around noon, they stopped at a small diner on the edge of town. With $5, they bought a sandwich to share and 2 glasses of water. "Now what?" asked Caleb, tears beginning to form in his eyes. Nathan looked around. The road stretched into the countryside, full of farms and small homesteads. Maybe they would find work there, maybe. "Let's follow this road. I've always heard that people in rural towns are more welcoming." It was another forced optimism, but Caleb seemed to perk up a little. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. They walked for another 2 hours under the strong sun. The backpacks weighed on their shoulders and their feet were starting to hurt. Caleb complained, but Nathan encouraged him to keep going. That's when they saw the shed. It was there in the middle of a vacant lot, like a rusty skeleton against the blue sky. The zinc sheets were corroded, the door hung on a single hinge, and tall weeds grew all around. What an ugly place, commented Caleb. But Nathan saw something different. He saw possibilities. An elderly man came out of a simple house across the road. He wore a straw hat with holes and walked with a slight limp. "Are you boys lost?" "No, sir. We're traveling," replied Nathan. "Traveling," repeated the man with a half smile. "To where?" Nathan looked at Caleb, then at the shed, and something inside him made a decision that would change everything. "Do you know who owns that shed?" "Me. I mean, it was mine. Now it just gives me a headache." "Why do you ask?" "Is it for sale?" The man laughed, but it wasn't a mocking laugh. "For sale? Son, that thing isn't even good for storing old tools. The roof tiles are full of holes. There's no electricity, no water. It's just scrap metal. But would you sell it?" The man, who introduced himself as Mr. Henderson, studied Nathan for a long moment. "How old are you, son?" 17. "And your brother?" 15. Mr. Henderson took off his hat and scratched his grey head. "Did you run away from home?" Nathan hesitated. Lying would be easier, but something in the man's posture made him tell the truth. "We were kicked out." "I see." Mr. Henderson put his hat back on. "And you think you can live in that thing?" "If you let us, we'll take care of the place. We'll work. We won't cause any trouble." "Work where? There's nothing here for miners." "We'll find a way," insisted Nathan. Mr. Henderson looked at the shed, then at the two brothers. Nathan realized he was evaluating something more than just the sale of an old property. "How much money do you have?" Nathan took the money out of his pocket. $10 left. "That's all." "That's all." "You know that thing isn't even worth $5, right?" said Mr. Henderson, pointing to the shed. Nathan felt his heart beat faster. $5 was exactly what they had, more or less. "If you accept our $10, we'll take the shed and promise to take good care of the place." Mr. Henderson was silent for a long time. Nathan held his breath. "Are you sure you want to do this? This isn't a game, son. That thing is no home for anyone. I'm sure." "And you?" he asked Caleb. Caleb looked at Nathan, then at the shed, and nodded timidly. "All right, but on one condition. If in 1 month you can't improve that place at least a little, I want it back. And no refund." "Deal," said Nathan, extending his hand. Mr. Henderson shook the boy's hand, and Nathan felt he was making the first serious deal of his life. "I'll go get some papers from the house. It's nothing official, but at least it'll be on record that you can stay there." When Mr. Henderson walked away, Caleb grabbed Nathan's arm. "Nate, have you lost your mind? We can't live in that—" "Yes, we can. It's just for now, until we get settled. But it doesn't even have a proper door. We'll fix it. There's no bathroom. We'll figure it out." "Nate?" Nathan held his brother's shoulders and looked into his eyes. "Caleb, listen. I know it seems impossible right now, but it's what we have. And you know what? It's ours. For the first time in our lives, we're going to have something that's really ours." Caleb didn't seem convinced, but he didn't say anything else. Mr. Henderson came back with a simple piece of paper where he had handwritten the terms of the agreement. Nathan signed with the feeling he was signing much more than a purchase. He was signing the first chapter of a new life. "Good luck, boys," said Mr. Henderson, putting the $10 in his pocket. "You're going to need it." When the man walked away, the brothers were left alone in front of their new home. "Now what?" asked Caleb. Nathan looked at the rusty shed, the broken roof tiles, the crooked door. He looked at the dusty road, the tall weeds, the sky beginning to darken. "Now we go inside," he said, taking Caleb's hand. They crossed the lot, stepping on the dry grass. The door creaked when Nathan pushed it open. The inside was worse than they had imagined. The floor was packed dirt, spider webs hung from the corners, and a smell of mold dominated the space. "Nate, I want to go home," whispered Caleb. "This is our home now," replied Nathan, trying to keep his voice steady. But when Caleb began to cry softly, Nathan felt for the first time the real weight of the decision he had made. They were just two scared boys in an old shed, without light, without water, without food, and with no idea what to do next. The first night was the longest of their lives. They lay on the hard ground, using their backpacks as pillows. The cold of the early morning came in through the gaps in the roof tiles, and all the noises of the night seemed amplified in the silence of the countryside. "Nate," whispered Caleb in the darkness. "Yeah? Do you think Mum would be mad at us?" Nathan closed his eyes, trying to find an answer that wouldn't hurt so much. "I think she'd be proud. We didn't give up, but we lost everything. We didn't lose anything, we still have each other." Caleb moved closer to his brother, seeking warmth and comfort. "What if we can't make it, Nate?" "We will. I don't know how yet, but we will." The next morning, Nathan woke up to Caleb coughing. The boy had spent the whole night shivering from the cold and now seemed to be getting sick. "How are you feeling?" "Bad. My throat hurts." Nathan looked around. They needed water, food, medicine, but they had no more money. "I'll look for work today. You stay here and rest." "Don't leave me alone, Nate. It'll just be a few hours. I need to get some money to buy food." Nathan left determined, but his determination faded as he walked around the local farms. At every place he stopped, he heard the same answer. They didn't hire miners, especially without documents or a fixed address. At the fifth place, a vegetable farm, the owner was at least more polite. "Son, I'd even give you work, but the inspectors are on the warpath. If they catch me with a miner working, I lose my license." "But sir, I work hard. I won't cause any trouble." "I don't doubt it, but I can't take the risk." Nathan was heading back, discouraged, when he passed a small market by the side of the road. A woman in her 50s was sweeping the sidewalk in front. "Excuse me, ma'am. You don't need help with anything, do you?" The woman, who wore a flowery apron, stopped sweeping and looked at Nathan. "There's always a need, son, but I can't afford to hire anyone. I don't want money. Just a meal. For me and my brother." The woman, whose name was Mrs. Higgins, tilted her head, curious. "How old are you?" 17. "And where are your parents?" Nathan hesitated, but decided to tell the truth. "We don't have parents, just me and my brother, and he's kind of sick." "Where do you live?" "In Mr. Henderson's old shed." Mrs. Higgins's eyes widened. "You bought that thing?" "We did." "My goodness, and how do you plan to live there?" "We'll manage, but first I need to take care of my brother." Mrs. Higgins studied Nathan for a long moment. There was something in the boy's determination that touched her. "All right, you help me unload a truck of vegetables today, and I'll give lunch to both of you, and maybe some home remedies for your brother." "Really?" Nathan's eyes lit up. "Really. But just for today, okay? I can't be supporting anyone." "I understand. Thank you very much, Mrs. Higgins." Nathan worked like he had never worked before. He unloaded boxes of tomatoes, lettuce, carrots, potatoes. He set up the display, swept the market, cleaned the windows. Mrs. Higgins watched, impressed by the boy's willingness. When he finished, she prepared 2 generous plates of home-cooked food and wrapped up some natural medicines. "For your brother's cough," she explained, handing over a jar of homemade syrup. "How can I thank you?" "By taking good care of your brother. And if you come back tomorrow, maybe I'll have some more work." Nathan returned to the shed with a lighter heart. Caleb had spent the day alone, scared, but when he saw the food and the medicine, he smiled for the first time since they left home. "How did you manage this?" "By working. And Mrs. Higgins said she might have work for tomorrow, too." "Is she nice?" "She seems to be." They ate in silence, sitting on the floor of the shed. The food had never tasted so good. Afterward, Nathan gave the syrup to Caleb and watched his brother until he fell asleep. On that second night, even still on the cold, hard floor, Nathan felt something different. A small hope. The next day, Caleb was better. He went with Nathan to Mrs. Higgins's market, who was surprised to see the two together. "This is my brother, Caleb," Nathan introduced. "Hi, Mrs. Higgins," Caleb greeted timidly. "Hello, dear, how's the cough?" "Better." "Thank you for the medicine." Mrs. Higgins smiled, and Nathan noticed there was something maternal in that smile. "Today I need you two to help me plant some seedlings in the backyard. Can you do that?" "Of course," they answered together. Working the land brought a strange feeling to the brothers. It was tiring, but there was something comforting about seeing the little seedlings being planted, imagining they would grow and bear fruit. "You have a knack for this," Mrs. Higgins commented. "Have you ever thought about planting something on your land?" "We don't know anything about farming," Nathan confessed. "No one is born knowing, but if you want, I can teach you some basics." "You would do that?" "Why not? You're hard-working and honest. That's already worth a lot." That afternoon, Mrs. Higgins went to the shed with them. She walked around the property, observing the soil, the sunlight, the topography. "This land has potential," she said finally. "The soil is a bit dry, but with water and care it could produce well." "But how will we get water?" Caleb asked. "Didn't Mr. Henderson mention anything about a well?" "No. There's an artesian well here, very old, but it might still work." Mrs. Higgins led them to a concrete structure half hidden by weeds at the back of the property. "This is it. You'll need a pump to get the water out, but the well should still be good." Nathan looked at that discovery as if it were a treasure. Their own water meant independence, endless possibilities. "How much does a pump like that cost?" "New, about $60. Used, maybe $20. $20 seemed like a fortune at that moment, but Nathan started making plans. "If I work every day, how long would it take to save that money?" "Working for me, a week gets you about $12. But there are other places you can work too." Mrs. Higgins offered to introduce them to other merchants in the area who might need occasional help. In just a few days, the brothers had a routine. They woke up early, worked in different places, and returned to the shed in the late afternoon. They still slept on the floor, still took cold showers from the outdoor faucet at Mrs. Higgins's market, still got cold at night. But there was a direction, a purpose. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like, and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. A week later, they counted the money they'd saved, $20. It wasn't enough for the pump, but Nathan had an idea. "What if we look for an old pump to fix?" Mrs. Higgins introduced them to Mr. Miller, the owner of an agricultural equipment repair shop. The man was curt, not much of a talker, but when Nathan explained the situation, he became interested. "I have an old pump here that's been sitting for years. If you can get it working, I'll factor that into the price." "How so?" "I'll charge you $12 for it, but you only take it if you can make it work. If you can't, it's free anyway, so it doesn't take up space here." It was a risky bet, but Nathan accepted. The pump was truly old and rusty. Mr. Miller explained the basics of how it worked, but said they'd have to figure out how to fix it on their own. "If you don't understand, ask Mr. Henderson. He knew about these things back when the well worked." Nathan and Caleb spent 2 whole days trying to disassemble, clean, and understand the pump. Their hands turned black with grease. They cut themselves on sharp parts, and they sweated under the hot sun. When they finally managed to get the pump to show signs of life, they felt a joy they had never experienced before. It was the joy of conquering something with their own hands. "It worked!" shouted Caleb, seeing water gush from the well for the first time. Nathan smiled, but the joy was short-lived. The pump worked for a few minutes and then stopped for good. "I think it burned out," assessed Mr. Miller when they went to tell him the result. "Now what?" "Now you've learned that it doesn't always work the first time. But I liked your effort. The pump is yours anyway, and when you save up money to buy the burned-out parts, I'll help you fix it." Once again, it wasn't quite a victory, but it wasn't a complete defeat either. That night, while Caleb slept, Nathan lay awake thinking. 3 weeks had passed since they left their stepfather's house. 3 weeks living in a shed with no amenities, working from sunup to sundown, dreaming of a water pump. Had they made the right choice? The answer came the next day in an unexpected way. Nathan was working at the market when he saw a familiar woman talking to Mrs. Higgins. It was Mrs. Gable, the neighbor who had tried to defend them the night they were kicked out. "Nathan," she called him, surprised. "So good to see you, boy." "Hi, Mrs. Gable. How are you both? Where are you living?" Nathan hesitated, but Mrs. Higgins answered for him. "They're living in Mr. Henderson's shed. They bought the place." "Bought it?" Mrs. Gable's eyes widened. "What do you mean, bought it?" "It's a long story," said Nathan. "And Caleb?" "He's fine. Working too." Mrs. Gable asked to speak with Nathan in private. "Son, I came here because I have news about Frank." Nathan's heart raced. "What news?" "He found out the truth about the money you took." "What do you mean?" "He found the receipts for your mother's medicine among her things. He knows you used the money to try to save Mrs. Martha." Nathan felt his legs go weak. For all these weeks he had carried the weight of guilt and the lie. Now Frank knew the truth. And what did he say? He said he was an idiot, that he acted on impulse, that he wants you back. He wants us back? He does. He's eaten up with remorse. He asked me to find you and say he forgives everything. This is your home too." Nathan fell silent for a long moment. The offer he had so longed to hear during those first nights in the shack now sounded strange. "And you, what do you think?" he asked Mrs. Gable. "I think you're both too young to live on your own. I think you should at least talk to him." "I'll think about it." "Don't take too long, Nathan. Frank isn't doing well. I think he misses you too." When Mrs. Gable left, Nathan was confused. For weeks he had dreamed of this moment, of Frank apologizing, wanting them back. But now, when the possibility was real, he didn't know if it was what he wanted. That night he told Caleb about the conversation. "He wants us back?" asked Caleb, his eyes shining. "He does." "Then let's go." "It's not that simple, Caleb." "Why not?" "We could have a real house again, food every day, a soft bed." "And leave all this behind?" "Leave what? An old shack?" Nathan looked around. To Caleb it really was just an old shack, but for him it had become something more. It had become a symbol that they could survive on their own. "Caleb, here we don't depend on anyone. No one can kick us out again." "But Frank has changed. Mrs. Gable said so. He's changed now. What if he changes again?" "Nate, I'm tired of sleeping on the floor, tired of cold showers, tired of not having a TV, of not having friends." Nathan realized his brother was suffering more than he let on. While he saw the experience as an adventure, Caleb saw it as deprivation. "All right, we'll go visit Frank, but just to visit, to talk." "Really? Really?" The following Sunday, they took the bus back to town. The 1-hour trip seemed to last an eternity. Caleb was eager, Nathan was apprehensive. The house was exactly as they had left it, but it seemed smaller. Frank greeted them at the door, and Nathan was shocked by his appearance. He had lost weight, his hair was unkempt, his eyes sunken. "You came," he said, his voice choked. "Mrs. Gable said you wanted to talk," replied Nathan, keeping some distance. "I do, yes. Please come in." The house smelled of home-cooked food. Frank had prepared Caleb's favorite dish, pasta with tomato sauce and cheese. "Please sit down," Frank asked, nervous. "I need to apologize." Nathan and Caleb sat on the sofa, side by side. "I was a fool," Frank continued. "I acted on impulse, out of anger. I didn't stop to think, to investigate. When I found the receipts for Martha's medicine, I understood everything." Nathan looked down. "Nathan, you used the money to try to save your mother, and I threw you out for it. Forgive me." "Why didn't you ask before?" said Nathan, the old anger returning. "Why didn't you give me a chance to explain?" "Because I was drunk. Because I was angry at everything, at life, at the situation. I took it out on you. And does that make it okay?" "No, it doesn't make anything okay. It just explains why I was such a fool." Caleb, who had been quiet until then, spoke. "Frank, can we come back?" "Of course you can. This is your home. It always has been." Nathan looked around at the family room, at the kitchen where they used to have breakfast, at the stairs leading to the room they shared. "What if you change your mind again?" he asked. "I won't. I've learned my lesson." "How can I be sure?" Frank stood up and went to a cabinet. He took out some papers and came back. "These are the house documents. I'm going to transfer the title to both of your names. That way, even if I lose my mind again, no one can kick you out." Caleb looked at Nathan with hope. The offer was generous, but Nathan felt something strange. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you are the sons I never had. Because Martha asked me to take care of you. Because I want to make up for my stupidity." Nathan fell silent for a long time. "Can I think about it?" Of course. But don't take too long, I miss you guys. Back at the shed, Caleb couldn't stop talking about the possibility of going back. Nate, he seems sincere, and he's giving us the house. I know. Then why are you hesitating? Nathan couldn't explain. It was a confusing feeling, a mix of old hurt and new pride. Caleb, do you really want to go back? I do. I can't stand living like this anymore. That night, Nathan barely slept. By morning, he had made a decision. Caleb, if you want to go back, you can go back. And you? I'm staying. What do you mean you're staying? I'm staying here. I'm going to make this place work. Caleb was shocked. Alone? If I have to. Nate, have you lost your mind? No. I realize something, Caleb. For the first time in my life, I've achieved something through my own effort. This broken pump, this old shed, this land, it's mine. Nobody gave it to me, nobody can take it away. But it's just an old shed. To you, yes, to me it's independence. Caleb started to cry. Don't do this, Nate. Don't leave me. I'm not leaving you. I'm giving you a choice. If you want to go back, go. I'll understand. But we've always stuck together. And we still can. You can come visit me. You can even help me out here on weekends. It's not the same. Nathan hugged his brother. I know it's not. But everyone has to follow their own path. Caleb cried a little more, then calmed down. If I go back, you won't be mad. I won't. I'll understand. And if I want to come back here later, the door will always be open. That afternoon, Nathan walked Caleb to the bus stop. The goodbye was hard for both of them. Is it going to work out, Nate? It will. Somehow, it will. Do you promise you'll take care of yourself? I promise. And promise you won't be mad at me? I promise. The bus arrived. Caleb got on and waved from the window until he disappeared around the bend in the road. Nathan walked back to the shed alone for the first time. The silence was different now. It was no longer the silence of two scared brothers. It was the silence of a young man determined to build something of his own. That night, lying on the shed floor, Nathan made a promise to himself. He would turn that place into a real home. He didn't know how, he didn't know when, but he knew he would succeed. The first week alone was hard. He missed Caleb's company, their nighttime talks, the feeling of protecting someone. But he also discovered things about himself he hadn't known. He discovered he liked working the land, that he had a knack for fixing things, that he was more resilient than he'd imagined. Mrs. Higgins noticed the change in him. You seem more focused, she commented. How so? I don't know. More determined. Like you know exactly what you want. I think I do. And what is it? Nathan looked at the land around the shed, imagining what it would be like with plants growing, with the pump working, with simple but meaningful improvements. I want to make this place a real home. I want to plant, harvest, live off what I produce here. That's a beautiful dream, but it's going to take a lot of work. I'm not afraid of work. And he really wasn't. Nathan began dedicating every free moment to improving the shed. He fixed the door, patched some holes in the roof, cleared the land around it. With the money he saved from working, he bought basic tools, simple building materials, seeds. Mr. Miller helped him fix the pump for good. When water finally gushed steadily from the well, Nathan felt a joy he had never experienced before. Now you have everything you need to start, said Mr. Miller. Start what? To really live. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. The months passed quickly. Nathan established a routine. He woke before sunrise, tended to his plants, worked for others during the day, and returned to care for more plants at dusk. The first harvest was small, but it represented something enormous. Bright red tomatoes that he had planted, watered, cared for. They were the literal fruit of his labor. Mrs. Higgins was the first customer. These tomatoes are beautiful, Nathan. They're the first I've harvested. Can I buy about £6? You don't even have to pay. You're the one who taught me to plant. No, business is business. If you want to be a real farmer, you have to learn to sell your produce. Nathan sold the tomatoes and felt something he had never felt before. The pride of receiving money for something he had created with his own hands. Caleb would visit him on weekends. Initially, he still tried to convince him to return home, but as he saw the improvements in the shack, he began to understand his brother's choice. "Nate, this place is looking good," he admitted during one visit. "It's becoming a home," corrected Nathan. "And are you happy?" Nathan looked around. The shack was still simple, but now it had a new door, some open windows, a small makeshift bathroom. Outside, rows of vegetables grew in an orderly fashion. For the first time in my life, I'm doing exactly what I want to do. Don't you miss the city?" "No. I miss you sometimes, but not the city." "I miss you too." "How are things with Frank?" "Good. He really changed. He's more affectionate, more present. He even stopped drinking." "That's good. But sometimes I wonder, did he really change, or is he just afraid of us leaving again?" It was a smart question. Nathan looked at Caleb with new eyes. His brother had matured too. "And you, what do you think?" "I think he changed, but I also think the change came from the scare of losing us." "Could be." "Nate, can I tell you something?" "Sure." "Sometimes I feel like staying here too. Not forever, but I don't know. To try it out." "There's space," said Nathan, smiling. "Really?" "Really. Whenever you want to come spend a few weeks, just let me know." It was around this time that Nathan met Mrs. Beverly. She appeared one Saturday morning, walking slowly down the dusty road. She was a woman of about 70, hair completely white and tied in a bun, clothes simple but clean. "Good morning, young man." "Good morning, ma'am. Are you the boy who bought Mr. Henderson's shack?" "I am. May I take a look at what you're doing here?" Nathan felt a bit wary. Most neighbors still viewed him with reservation, like an intruder too young to be there. "Yes, you may." Mrs. Beverly walked slowly through the plot, observing the plants, the makeshift irrigation system, the improvements to the shack. "Did you do all this by yourself?" "I did, with help from a few people, but mostly by myself." "How old are you?" 18. I had a birthday last month." "And how long have you been here?" 8 months. Mrs. Beverly stopped walking and looked directly at Nathan. "May I ask you a personal question?" "You may. Why does an 18-year-old boy choose to live alone in a place like this?" Nathan had answered this question many times, but there was something in the way Mrs. Beverly asked that made him think before answering. "Because here, I don't depend on anyone's goodwill. Here, I build my own life." Mrs. Beverly nodded slowly. "I understand. Do you know who I am?" "No, Mum. I own the farm across the road. I've lived alone too for 15 years. "Alone? Why?" "Because my husband died and my children went to the city. They kept pestering me to sell the farm and go live near them, but I didn't want to. I like my independence." Nathan smiled. She was the first person who truly understood his choice. "And you take care of the farm all by yourself, Ma'am?" "I do. I don't do everything I used to anymore, but I manage. The problem is some things have gotten difficult for me." "What kind of things?" "Heavy maintenance, fence repair, land clearing, things that need strength I don't have anymore." Nathan began to understand where the conversation was heading. "You want to hire my work? I want to propose a partnership." "How so?" "You help me with the heavy work on my farm, and I'll teach you more advanced farming techniques. I'll teach you proper composting, natural pest control, crop rotation, things I've learned in 50 years of working the land." The offer was tempting. Nathan knew he was still very much an amateur at farming, and Mrs. Beverly clearly knew what she was doing. "And how would this partnership work?" 3 mornings a week you work for me. I'll pay a fair wage for the work plus the farming lessons. On the other mornings, you tend to your own things here." "And the afternoons?" "The afternoons are yours. Work for whoever you want." Nathan considered the proposal. It would be a stable source of income plus knowledge and the company of someone who understood his life choice. "Deal." "Great. Start Monday." The partnership with Mrs. Beverly was transformative. Nathan not only learned advanced farming techniques, but also gained a mentor and gradually a friend. Mrs. Beverly was a woman of few words, but when she spoke, her lessons were valuable. She taught Nathan to read the signs of the land, to understand when a plant was healthy or sick, to work in harmony with the seasons. "The land is not our enemy, boy," she would say. "It's our partner, but like any partnership, it needs mutual respect." Under her guidance, Nathan's production tripled. Now he had enough variety to sell at the town market on Saturdays. The first time he set up a stall at the market was a milestone. Nathan woke up before 4 in the morning, harvested his best vegetables, arranged everything in crates and headed to town. The market was a new world. Experienced vendors shouted the prices of their goods. Customers haggled. Children ran between the stalls. Nathan set up his modest stall in a less busy corner. Tomatoes, lettuces, carrots, radishes, all fresh, harvested that day. The first few hours were disheartening. People passed by, looked but didn't buy. Nathan began to think he had made a mistake. That's when an elderly lady stopped at his stall. "Are these tomatoes yours, young man?" "Yes, ma'am, I picked them yesterday." "Where do you grow them?" "On a small farm, here in the region." "How long have you been farming?" "Almost a year." The woman picked up a tomato, smelled it, gave it a gentle squeeze to test its firmness. "This tomato looks like it was planted with care." "It was, ma'am." "How much is it?" Nathan stated the price, which was a bit lower than the other vendors. "Why is it cheaper than the others?" "Because I'm still just starting out." "Then you're making a mistake. Good quality shouldn't be cheap. The customer gets suspicious." It was a business lesson Nathan had never considered. The woman bought 6 pounds of tomatoes and promised to return the following week. "If you keep up the quality, you'll have a loyal customer." Gradually, other customers became interested. Nathan realized his youth was both an advantage and a disadvantage. Some people distrusted the experience of someone so young. Others were charmed by the story of the boy who left home to grow his own food. By the end of the day, he had sold about half of his produce. It wasn't a roaring success, but it was a start. "So how did it go?" asked Mrs. Beverly when he returned. "Slow, but it went." The first time is always like that. The market is a world of relationships. You need to earn people's trust. How do I do that? By being consistent, the same quality every week. Punctuality, honesty in pricing. And what if I can't maintain the quality every week? You will. You have the gift. Gift. For working the land. Some people are born with it, others can never develop it. You were born with it. Nathan had never thought he might have a gift for anything. The idea both excited and frightened him at the same time. As the months passed, his sales at the market increased. Nathan developed a group of loyal customers who came specifically looking for his products. Mrs. White, a strict retiree, bought only his tomatoes because, according to her, they had the taste of real tomatoes. Mr. Sullivan, owner of a small pizzeria, bought all his basil because it was the most aromatic at the market. Nathan was beginning to understand that he had found not just a way to survive, but a calling. One Saturday morning, as he was setting up his stall at the market, he saw a familiar figure approaching. It was Caleb, but he wasn't alone. With him was Frank. Nathan felt his stomach tighten. It was the first time he had seen his stepfather since the day he was kicked out over a year ago. "Nate," called Caleb, waving. Nathan waved back, but his eyes were fixed on Frank. The man looked embarrassed, hesitant. "Hi, Nate," Caleb greeted, coming close to the stall. "Are these vegetables yours?" "They are." "Man, that's so cool. Frank, look at what my brother does." Frank approached and observed the displayed produce. "Everything looks very nice, Nathan. Thank you." The atmosphere was tense. Caleb noticed and tried to lighten it. "Nate, Frank wanted to come see your work." "It's true," Frank confirmed. "Caleb is always talking about you, about the things you're doing." Nathan kept arranging the produce, not knowing what to say. "Can I buy some tomatoes?" asked Frank. "You can." "How much?" Nathan stated the price. Frank took the money from his wallet but hesitated before handing it over. "Nathan, I know you must still be angry with me, and you have every right to be. Nathan stopped handling the produce and looked at Frank. I'm not angry anymore. You're not? No, I was angry at the beginning, now I don't feel anything. Nothing. Nothing at all. You're part of the past, I'm building my future. Frank seemed unsure if that was good or bad. I understand. But, in case someday you want to talk, or if you need anything. I won't need anything. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Mrs. White. Nathan, did you bring the good tomatoes today? Yes, I did, Mrs. White. Look here. Nathan immediately perked up. This tomato has a beautiful color, the lady praised. I want £6. Nathan weighed the tomatoes, talked with Mrs. White about the weather and its influence on the crop, took the money and thanked her for her loyalty. Frank and Caleb watched the entire interaction. You have regular customers? Asked Frank, impressed. A few. And you live just from this? I live from what I grow and sell, plus some extra jobs. And is it working? Nathan looked at Frank, then at Caleb, then at his simple but organized stall. It's working. Frank nodded slowly. I'm proud of you, you know. Proud. Of what you've managed to build on your own. I wouldn't have had that courage at your age. Nathan was surprised by the compliment. He hadn't expected it. Caleb, Frank called. I'll wait for you in the car. I want to give you two some time to talk. When Frank walked away, Caleb moved closer to the stall. He really wanted to come here, Nate. Why? To see with his own eyes how you're doing. He keeps saying it was kicking you out that made you discover what you were capable of. And what do you think? I think he's right. You've changed a lot, Nate. For better or for worse. For better. You seem more sure of yourself. More grown up. I feel that way. And are you happy? Nathan looked around the market at his produce, at the other vendors who already greeted him as a colleague, at the customers who came looking for him. I am. Very happy. Then it was the right decision. It was. Caleb was quiet for a moment. Nate, can I tell you something? Of course. Sometimes I envy you. Envy? Your courage, your independence, being sure of what you want to do with your life. And you're not sure. I don't know. I'm in my last year of high school. Everyone asks what I'm going to do after, and I have no idea. You have time to figure it out. I do. But it's kind of distressing not knowing. Nathan finished organizing some produce and looked at his brother. Caleb, want some advice? I do. Don't rush to decide. I only discovered I liked agriculture when I started planting out of necessity. Sometimes life leads us where we need to be. What if I want to come spend a vacation here? Whenever you want, the door is always open. Really? Really. In fact, I'm thinking of expanding production. It would be good to have help. Caleb's eyes lit up. Really? Really. You can spend January here. Help me with the big harvest. It'll be an interesting experience. I'd love to. They talked a little more until it was time for Caleb to leave. The farewell was warmer than other times. Take care, Nate. You too. And thanks for bringing Frank. Are you still mad at him? No. Actually, I think I'm even grateful. Grateful? If he hadn't kicked me out, I never would have discovered all this. Caleb smiled and hugged his brother. I love you, Nate. I love you too. After they left, Nathan kept selling his vegetables, but his mind was elsewhere. Frank's visit had stirred him up more than he wanted to admit. It wasn't anger he felt. It was something more complex, a mix of understanding, forgiveness, and gratitude. Frank had made a mistake, but that mistake had led Nathan to find his true path. At the end of the day, while packing up the leftover produce, Nathan reflected on how life could take unexpected turns. A year ago, he was a scared kid, kicked out of his home, sleeping on the floor of an old shed. Now he was a young farmer with loyal customers, a discovered vocation, a life built with his own hands. The shed was still simple, but now it was truly his home. It had running water, electricity installed with the help of Mr. Miller, a small functional bathroom, a basic but complete kitchen. More important than the physical improvements were the internal ones. Nathan had discovered he was capable of much more than he imagined, that he could survive on his own, thrive on his own, be happy on his own. But on his own didn't mean lonely. There was Mrs. Beverly, with whom he worked 3 mornings a week, and who had become a true confidant. There was Mrs. Higgins, who kept offering extra work and had become almost an adoptive mother. There were his market customers who followed his progress week after week, and there was Caleb, who, even though he lived in the city, visited regularly and would now come spend his vacation helping with the planting. Nathan realized he had built not just a house, but a community, a group of people who cared about him and whom he also cared about. That night, while preparing dinner in his simple kitchen, Nathan made plans for the future. He wanted to expand the planting, diversify the produce, maybe even raise some chickens. He had a kind of crazy idea, too. What if he turned part of the land into a sort of community garden, a place where other people in the area could learn agriculture, especially young people who, like him, were looking for a path in life? It was just an idea for now, but Nathan liked to dream big. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Caleb was talking to Frank about the visit to the market. "He really does seem happy," commented Frank. "Seems like it. I don't know if I did the right thing by sending you both away, but looking at the result, Nate was always strong, stronger than me. You're strong too, Caleb, just in a different way." "How so?" "He needed to discover he could live on his own. You already knew you could live in a community. They're different kinds of strength." Caleb had never thought about it that way. "And now?" he asked. "Now you both have what you need. He has the independence he wanted. You have the security you needed. And you're still brothers." "We are. And I learned that family isn't defined by who lives in the same house, but by who cares for each other." It was a lesson Frank had learned in the worst possible way, but at least he had learned it. The following months were a time of steady growth for Nathan. His production increased, his clientele expanded, his reputation in the region solidified. Mrs. Beverly got sick in September, and Nathan single-handedly took care of her farm for a few weeks. It was a trial by fire that he passed with flying colors. "You don't need me to teach you farming anymore," said Mrs. Beverly when she recovered. "Now you can teach me a few things." "Me teach you? You brought new ideas, methods I didn't know. We never stop learning." It was true. Nathan had started reading about sustainable agriculture, permaculture, soil conservation techniques. He combined the traditional knowledge Mrs. Beverly had taught him with modern information he found in books and online. The result was more efficient and ecologically responsible production. In December, Caleb came to spend his school break at the farm. It was the first time the brothers had lived together again since the separation. "Man, this place has changed a lot," said Caleb admiringly. "You like it?" "I love it. It looks like a real farm now." It was true. What was once a rusty shed in the middle of the brush was now an organized, productive, small rural property. "And now you're going to teach me how to plant?" asked Caleb. "I am. Ready for some hard work?" So ready. The weeks Caleb spent at the farm were special for both brothers. They worked together during the day, talked at night, rediscovered the closeness they'd always had. Caleb proved to be a good learner. He had less patience than Nathan, but was more creative, always suggesting improvements and innovations. "Nate, why don't you make a greenhouse for the tomatoes?" "A greenhouse?" "To protect them from rain and cold. I saw in an online video that it really increases production." Nathan had never thought of that, but the idea made sense. "It must be expensive." "We can improvise, make it with wood and plastic." "Do you know how?" "No, but we can learn." The improvised greenhouse was the first project the brothers did together on the farm. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. "We make a good team," commented Nathan, admiring the result. "We really do. Too bad I have to go back to school. But you'll come back next break, right?" "I will. Actually, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "I'm thinking about majoring in agronomy in college." Nathan looked at his brother, surprised. "Really?" "Really. These weeks here made me realize I like this too." "But didn't you want to do engineering?" I did because it's what everyone expected, but agronomy suits me better. Nathan was moved. The idea of having Caleb working with him, not just on breaks but professionally, was exciting. It would be amazing to have you here. Well then, we'd better start planning the expansion of this place. They spent the last week of the break making plans, where they could plant more, what kind of crops to diversify, how to modernize the irrigation. Nate, I have a kind of crazy idea, said Caleb one of the last nights. What idea? What if we turned this place into an agricultural teaching center? Nathan nearly choked on the water he was drinking. How so? Like this. We produce, but we also teach other people to produce, especially young people who don't have opportunities in the city. Do you think it would work? I do. Look, you taught yourself in just over a year. Imagine how many other young people could learn too if they had the chance. The idea was ambitious, but Nathan liked it immediately. Would it be like a school? More like a training center. A person comes, spends some time here learning, then can work with us or start their own business. It's an interesting idea. It's our idea, Caleb corrected. Provided you're in, of course. Nathan looked around the farm he had built with his own hands. He imagined young people like he had been, lost without direction, finding there an opportunity for a fresh start. I'm in, but it's going to be a lot of work. We've always liked work. True. So it's decided? It's decided. When you get back from college, we'll turn this place into an agricultural training center. Deal. Caleb's return to the city was sad, but also hopeful. Now they had a joint project, a planned future. Nathan continued running the farm alone, but now with extra motivation. Every improvement he made, every technique he learned, he thought about how he could teach it to other young people in the future. The conversation with Mrs. Beverly about the project was revealing. It's a beautiful idea, son, but do you have any idea what you're getting into? How so? Teaching isn't just about knowing how to do something. It's about knowing how to pass on the knowledge. It's having patience with those who don't learn at your pace. It's dealing with different people, with different stories. You don't think I can do it? I think you can, but you need to prepare. It's not just about knowing how to plant. It's about knowing how to teach planting. Nathan began to prepare in earnest. Besides continuing to study agriculture, he began reading about education, about how to teach adults, about how to deal with people in vulnerable situations. He also started making contacts in the region. He spoke with social workers, community leaders, owners of other farms who could offer internships for his future students. The reception was better than he expected. Many people were interested in the idea and offered to help. Mr. Miller offered to teach basic agricultural equipment mechanics. Mrs. Higgins was interested in giving rural management classes. Even Frank, in a conversation with Caleb, said he would like to help finance the project. He's not doing this out of pity, is he? Nathan asked when Caleb told him. No, he's doing it because he believes in the idea and because he wants to be part of something positive. Nathan considered the offer. Accepting help from Frank was still difficult, but if it was to help other young people... All right, but on one condition. He helps as an investor, not as the boss. He understands that. And I'll pay him back when I can. Nate, you don't have to. Yes, I do. It's a matter of principle. The training center project began to take concrete shape. Nathan made a basic business plan, researched necessary licenses, calculated infrastructure costs. It was a big investment, but feasible if done in stages. First, they would expand production. Then, they would build simple dormitories for the students. Finally, they would set up the classrooms and labs. In March, the first class of unofficial students arrived. 3 young people from the region who had heard about the project and wanted to learn agriculture. Megan, 19, had lost her job at a textile factory that closed down. Tyler, 22, had left his parents' house after a fight and was living at a friend's place. Ashley, 20, was a single mother looking for a way to support her young daughter. "Are you all sure you want to do this?" asked Nathan on the first day. "Farm work is no joke." "We're sure," replied Megan. "We prefer honest hard work to depending on favors." Nathan smiled. He recognized in her the same determination he had felt when he decided to stay at the shed. Then let's begin. The first month was challenging. Nathan discovered that teaching was really very different from knowing how to do. He needed to develop patience, find different ways to explain the same thing, handle the different learning paces. Megan was the most dedicated, but also the most anxious. She wanted to learn everything at once. Tyler was naturally skilled, but sometimes got lax on discipline. Ashley had little time because she needed to care for her daughter, but she made the most of every available minute. Mrs. Beverly helped a lot in this initial phase. She came every week to give a lesson on some aspect of agriculture, and her experience as a grandmother gave her more patience with the beginners. "Haste is the enemy of perfection," she would say to Megan. "Plants have time to grow. People do too." By the end of the first month, the 3 students had managed to plant and care for their own small garden. It wasn't much, but it was a start. "How do you feel?" asked Nathan. "Tired but happy," replied Ashley. "It's been a long time since I felt useful. I feel, I don't know, like I found something I didn't know I was looking for," said Tyler. "And I feel hopeful," added Megan. "For the first time in months, I have hope that I'll be able to support myself." Nathan was moved. It was exactly the feeling he had had when he planted his first tomatoes. The second month was more productive. The students were more confident now, and Nathan had developed a more efficient teaching method. He included simple theory lessons in the morning, practical work during the day, and talks about farm management in the afternoon. Caleb came every weekend to help. He was in his first semester of agronomy school and brought theoretical knowledge that complemented Nathan's practical experience. "How's school going?" asked Nathan during one of these visits. "Cool. Different than I imagined, but cool." "Different how?" "More theoretical than I expected. Sometimes I feel like I'm learning more here, working hands-on. Theory is important too, yeah, but without practice it feels kind of empty." Nathan nodded. He was beginning to understand that the ideal teaching model combined theory and practice in a balanced way. In the third month, something happened that completely changed the plans. Megan got a job at a neighboring farm applying what she had learned. "I can't believe I got it," she said, euphoric. "The farm owner was impressed with what I knew." "Congratulations," said Nathan, genuinely proud. "But this means I'll have to stop coming here." "Not necessarily. You can keep coming on weekends as an advanced student." "I can?" "Of course. In fact, you can help teach the next beginners." The idea of having former students helping to teach new ones was something Nathan hadn't planned, but it made perfect sense. "Really? I can teach?" "You can. Who better to teach a beginner than someone who learned recently and remembers the difficulties?" Megan beamed. Nathan realized he had created not just a teaching method, but a learning community. Tyler and Ashley also progressed. Tyler decided he wanted to specialize in organic farming and began reading everything on the subject. Ashley discovered she had a special talent for handling medicinal plants. "Everyone finds their specialty," commented Mrs. Beverly. "That's exactly how it should be." At the end of the third month, Nathan did an evaluation of the project. All 3 students had progressed significantly. One was already employed, the other 2 had real prospects of finding work or starting their own small businesses. More importantly, Nathan had discovered that he enjoyed teaching as much as he enjoyed planting. "I think we've found our calling," he said to Caleb during one of their nighttime conversations. "Calling?" "Training farmers, giving an opportunity to those who need to start over. That's a beautiful calling." "It is. And you know what else? I think it's a necessary calling." Caleb agreed. He had seen up close how the project had changed the lives of those 3 young people in just a few months. "And now, shall we make it official?" "Let's. I want to formalize the training center, seek official partnerships, maybe even get some recognition from the government. It'll be a lot of work. It will. But it's worth it." The following months were intensely active. Nathan divided his time between managing production, teaching new students, and handling all the bureaucracy to formalize the training center. Caleb managed to transfer some college credits for practical activities at the center, which allowed him to spend more time helping Nathan. Frank kept his promise to invest in the project. He helped finance the construction of simple dormitories for the students and a basic classroom. "No need to thank me," he said, when Nathan tried to express his gratitude. "I'm doing this for myself too. I want to be part of something that succeeds." Nathan understood. Frank was seeking redemption, a way to make up for the mistake he had made years ago. "You already are part of it," said Nathan. "You always have been, actually." "How so?" "If you hadn't thrown me out, I never would have discovered I was capable of all this." Frank was moved. "That's not what I meant back then." "I know, but that's what happened. Do you forgive me?" Nathan thought for a moment. "I forgave you a long time ago. In fact, I thank you." It was true, the anger had given way to understanding, and the understanding had given way to gratitude. The training center received its first official recognition 6 months later. The local city hall certified the program as a social interest initiative and offered support for expansion. "You are doing important work," said the Secretary of Social Development. "We haven't seen such an effective initiative for at-risk youth in a long time." Nathan felt proud, but also felt the weight of responsibility. Now they had official commitments, deadlines to meet, goals to achieve. "Can we handle this?" he asked Caleb. "We can. There are 2 of us now, remember?" "True." The first official class of the St. Nathan's Agricultural Training Center had 10 students. They came from neighboring towns, some referred by social workers, others who had heard about the program through former students. Nathan was nervous during the opening class. "Everyone, I want to start by telling a story," he said, looking at the attentive faces. 2 years ago, I was a 17-year-old boy who was thrown out of home and bought an old shed for $10. He told his full story for the first time. The desperation of the first nights, the difficulties, the small victories, the lessons learned. "I'm not here to promise it will be easy," he said at the end. "I'm here to prove it's possible." The students were silent for a moment, then began asking questions. They wanted details. They wanted to hear more about how he had managed to overcome each obstacle. Nathan realized his story wasn't just his own. It was the story of any young person who decided to take the reins of their own life. The center's first official year was a success. Of the 10 students, 8 secured professional placement or started their own small businesses. 1 returned to his family, who took him back, impressed by his transformation. 1 decided that agriculture wasn't for him, but used the experience to get a job at a rural supply store. "An 80% success rate," calculated Caleb. "It's impressive." "What makes the difference is that we understand what they're going through," said Nathan. "We've been in their shoes." "That's true. It's not just technique we teach. It's hope." The second year brought new challenges. Demand had grown, but the infrastructure was still limited. Nathan and Caleb needed to decide whether to expand rapidly or keep growth controlled. "What's your opinion?" asked Nathan. "I think we should grow slowly. It's better to serve fewer people well than to serve many poorly." "I agree." They decided to keep classes to a maximum of 15 students, each lasting 6 months. This allowed them to follow each student individually and maintain the quality of the teaching. Mrs. Beverly, now 75 years old, continued giving weekly classes and had become a sort of grandmother to all the students. "Son," she said to Nathan during one of his visits, "you've built something beautiful here." "We built it. You're part of this too." "I just planted a few little seeds. You're the one who made the garden grow." Nathan looked around the center. The original shed was still there, now turned into a tool storage area. Next to it, the new simple but functional buildings housed dormitories, a classroom, and a dining hall. In the field, organized rows of different crops stretched as far as the eye could see. Students worked intently, some veterans teaching newcomers. "You know what I think is most beautiful about all this?" said Mrs. Beverly. "What?" "It's that each person who passes through here takes a bit of this experience forward and teaches other people. It's like a chain of good that never stops growing." Nathan smiled. That was exactly how he felt too. In the 3rd year, the center received an unexpected visit. A group of journalists was doing a story on social initiatives in rural areas, and someone had recommended the St. Nathan's Agricultural Training Center. "How did the idea come about?" asked the reporter. Nathan told the story once more, but now from the perspective of someone who had turned a personal tragedy into an opportunity for hundreds of people. "Do you regret being kicked out of your home?" Nathan thought for a moment. "I don't regret it. It was painful at the time, but it led me to discover what I was capable of, and it allowed me to help other people discover what they are capable of." "And what is the future of the center? We want to keep growing, but without losing our essence. What matters isn't the size of the project, it's the impact on people's lives." The story aired on a regional network and brought even more visibility to the center. Nathan began receiving invitations to speak at events about social entrepreneurship. "You've become a reference," joked Caleb. "We've become a reference," corrected Nathan. "True. And you know what that means? That we have more responsibility." "Exactly. Now other people are looking to us as an example. We can't disappoint." The fourth year brought a special surprise. Megan, the center's first student, returned with a proposal. "Nathan, Caleb, are you up for expanding the project?" "How so?" "I secured a plot of land in my town. I want to set up a training center there too, using the methodology you developed." Nathan was surprised and proud at the same time. "Really?" "Really. I've already spoken with the town council there. I already have some interested investors. I just need your authorization and some help to get started." "Of course you have our authorization. In fact, you have our full support." "Can I use the name Agricultural Training Center?" "You can. In fact, how about we create a network, autonomous centers, but following the same philosophy?" The idea of a network of training centers was ambitious, but it made sense. Each region had its particularities, but the basic principles could be replicated. "How would it work?" asked Caleb. "Each center would be independent, managed by former students or people from the region itself. But we would share methodologies, experiences, teaching resources. And how would we maintain quality? By creating a certification system, minimum standards that all centers would need to meet." It was a project bigger than anything Nathan had imagined, but at the same time it was the natural evolution of what they had built. "Are you ready for this?" asked Caleb. Nathan looked at the center they had created, at the students working in the field, at the shed where it had all begun. "I don't know if I'm ready, but I know it's the next step." The fifth year was dedicated to structuring the network. Megan set up the second center in her town, closely following the protocols developed by Nathan and Caleb. Other former students became interested in the idea. Tyler wanted to open a center specializing in organic agriculture. Ashley was thinking of focusing on medicinal plants. "Each center can have its specialty," Nathan suggested in a general meeting. "But they all follow the basic principles: practical teaching, individual follow-up, the integral formation of the person." By the end of the fifth year, the St. Nathan's Agricultural Training Center network had 5 units operating and 3 more in planning. Nathan, now 23 years old, had become a national reference in agricultural education for youth in vulnerable situations. He received invitations to speak at universities, consulting requests from NGOs, partnership proposals from large companies. But he never lost his simplicity. He continued living on the original farm, continued teaching practical classes, continued being the first to arrive and the last to leave. "Aren't you afraid this might grow too much?" asked Mrs. Beverly in one of their conversations. "I am, but I'm also afraid it won't grow enough." "How so?" "Mrs. Beverly, there are thousands of young people like I was, lost youth, without prospects, needing an opportunity. If we can help some of them, it will have been worth it. And what if the quality drops as we grow? That's why we're creating the protocols, the certification systems, to ensure all centers maintain the standard." Mrs. Beverly nodded, but Nathan sensed she still had doubts. "Do you think we're doing it wrong?" "No, son, I think you're doing it right. I just think it's important not to forget where you came from." "How so?" "Remember what motivated you to start all this? It wasn't fame, it wasn't recognition, it was need, it was the desire to build a better life." Nathan understood the lesson. "You're right. We can't lose focus." "Exactly. Success is good, but it can't be the main goal." This conversation made Nathan rethink some things. In the following weeks, he reduced the number of external speaking engagements and returned to dedicating more time to the students at the original center. "We missed you in the practical classes," commented one of the students. "Yeah, I missed being here too." Nathan realized that as important as expanding the project was, its essence was right there, in the direct work with the young people who arrived lost and left with direction in their lives. Caleb, who was finishing college, brought an interesting proposal. "Nate, what if we systematized our entire methodology into a college course?" "How so?" "Create a technologist degree in social agriculture. Train educators specialized in working with youth in vulnerable situations." "Interesting. Where would it be?" "At a college in the region. They'd agree to create the course if we developed the curriculum." The idea was tempting. It would mean academic recognition for what they did, and it would allow training qualified educators for the network centers. "But do we have the competence to create a higher education course?" asked Nathan. "We have practical experience, and we can count on university professors for the theoretical part. I'll think about it." Nathan discussed the idea with Mrs. Beverly, with former students, with educators he knew. The general opinion was positive. "You have something unique," said an agronomy professor who visited the center. "The combination of technical knowledge with social sensitivity. That should be taught in all agronomy colleges." The 6th year was dedicated to developing the higher education course. Nathan and Caleb worked together with a team of pedagogues and agricultural education specialists to create the curriculum. The course would be different from any other. Besides traditional technical subjects, it would include applied psychology, adult education, social project management, community development. "We want to train not only agriculture technicians but educators capable of transforming lives," explained Nathan in the project presentation to the college's dean's office. "It's an innovative approach," agreed the dean, "and very necessary." The course was approved and would start the following year. Nathan would be one of the teachers, dividing his time between classes at the college and work at the center. "Do you feel prepared to be a university professor?" asked Caleb. "I don't know, but I feel prepared to share what I've learned." "It's the same thing." The 7th year brought new challenges and achievements. The higher education course started with 20 students, mostly young people interested in working with social agriculture. The St. Nathan's Agricultural Training Center network was now present in 12 cities, with over 300 young people graduated. Nathan received an invitation to participate in an international congress on agricultural education. It was the first time he would leave the country. "Are you going?" asked Caleb. "I don't know. I've never even left the state." "It's an important opportunity. You can learn about experiences from other countries and leave the center for a week. The center doesn't stop functioning because you traveled." Nathan ended up accepting the invitation. The trip to the Congress in Canada was revealing. He saw projects similar to his, but also discovered that his approach had unique aspects. "What you do in the United States is very interesting," said a Mexican educator. "The combination of technical training with rebuilding self-esteem is rare." "How so?" "Most programs focus only on the technical part. You understand that before teaching agriculture, you need to teach the person to believe in themselves." Nathan had never thought in those terms, but it was true. Much of the work they did was about rebuilding the students' self-confidence. Upon returning from the trip, Nathan was inspired with new ideas, but also reaffirmed in his fundamental principles. "How was it?" asked Mrs. Beverly. "Good. I learned a lot. But I also confirmed that we are on the right path." "That's good, and it didn't go to your head?" Nathan laughed. "No, Mrs. Beverly. In fact, it made me value even more what we have here." "Great, because what you have here is special." The 8th year was a milestone. Nathan completed a decade since being kicked out of home. The 17-year-old boy who had bought a shed for $10 now coordinated a nationally recognized network of educational centers. To celebrate, they organized a gathering of all former students. Over 200 people came of all ages, all with stories of overcoming. "When I look at all these people," said Nathan in the opening speech, "I realize that old shed was worth much more than $5. It was worth a whole lifetime of purpose." Megan, now coordinator of 3 centers in her region, gave an emotional testimony. Nathan and Caleb taught us that it doesn't matter where we come from, it matters where we're going, and all of us are going to a better place. Frank was present at the celebration. He and Nathan had developed a respectful relationship over the years, based on the mutual recognition that expulsion, however painful it had been the start of something greater. "You achieved something I never could," Frank said to Nathan in a private conversation. "What?" "Turn suffering into purpose. We can always turn our pain into lessons to help other people." "Yeah, it took me a while to learn that." Caleb, now a graduate with a master's in agricultural education, had become Nathan's ideal partner. While Nathan had the intuition and practical experience, Caleb brought the theoretical foundation and strategic vision. 10 years, Caleb reflected on the night of the celebration. 10 years, Nathan repeated. "Did you imagine it would come this far?" Nathan looked around. The original shed was preserved as a symbol, but around it had grown a complete educational complex. "No. That first night in the shed, I just wanted to survive until the next day. And now? Now I want the project to survive long after we're gone. I want it to keep helping young people, even when we're no longer here. It will continue. We've already trained enough educators to ensure that." It was true. The former students who had become center coordinators were already training their own successors. The project had taken on a life of its own. The 9th year brought recognition that Nathan had never actively sought, but which ended up arriving. The St. Nathan's Agricultural Training Center network was selected as one of the most impactful social initiatives in the country. Nathan received several awards, was featured on the covers of specialized magazines, and became a case study in universities. "How do you handle all this fame?" asked a journalist. "I don't handle fame. I handle responsibility," Nathan replied. "Every award I receive represents hundreds of young people who got a second chance in life. And plans for the future? To keep doing what we do. Always improving, but without losing our essence." The essence remained intact. Nathan continued living on the original farm, continued teaching practical classes, continued being accessible to any student who needed to talk. "Have you never thought about leaving here?" asked a visitor. "With your resume, you could work anywhere in the world. I could. But why would I leave? This is my place. It was here that I discovered who I am." In the 10th year, Nathan decided to make a significant change. At 28, he married Sarah, a social educator he had met at a conference and who shared his vision of social transformation through education. "Are you sure you want to marry me?" Nathan joked. "I'm also married to this project." "I know," Sarah replied. "Actually, that's why I fell in love with you. The wedding was simple, held at the center itself, with the presence of students, alumni, educators, and partners. Mrs. Beverly, now 82 years old, was the matron of honor. "Now you have a complete family," she said to Nathan. "I always have. You, Caleb, the student, you're all my family." "That's true. But now you have someone special to share it all with." Sarah brought new perspectives to the project. A specialist in inclusive education, she suggested adaptations to serve young people with different special needs. "Agriculture can be therapeutic for many people," she explained. "We can broaden the project's impact even further." And so the Therapeutic Agriculture Program was born, aimed at young people with mild intellectual disabilities, autism spectrum disorders, and individuals recovering from chemical dependency. "Each person has their own learning pace," Sarah would say in the classes. "Our role is to find the right way to teach each one." The program was an immediate success. Families who had never found alternatives for their children with special needs discovered in agriculture a form of development and social inclusion. "My son had never been interested in anything," said one mother. "Here he found something that motivates him to wake up every day." The 11th year brought an unexpected proposal. An international foundation offered funding to expand the project to other countries in Latin America. "It's an incredible opportunity," said the foundation representative. "You've developed something that can be replicated in different cultural contexts." Nathan and Caleb considered the proposal carefully. "What do you think?" asked Nathan. "I think it's the natural evolution of the project, but we have to ensure we don't lose control of quality." "How would we do that?" "By training local educators. taking our methodology, but adapting it to the realities of each country. The decision was to accept the proposal, but gradually. They would start with a pilot center in Mexico, a country where Nathan had met educators interested in his work. The international expansion process was complex but rewarding. Nathan and Caleb spent 2 months in Mexico, working with local educators to adapt the methodology to the country's cultural and economic specificities. "It's amazing how the basic principles are universal," Nathan commented. "Young people in vulnerable situations have similar needs anywhere in the world. That's true, but the ways to address those needs must be adapted to the local culture." The pilot center in Mexico was inaugurated with the presence of local authorities and representatives of international organizations. Nathan gave the opening speech in Spanish, a language he had learned especially for this occasion. "This is not just the expansion of a United States project," he said. "It is the birth of a Latin American network of social transformation through agricultural education." The 12th year was dedicated to consolidating the international experience. The Mexico Center was functioning well, and there was already interest in Colombia and Costa Rica. Nathan had become a regional reference in social agricultural education. He was invited to government events, consulted by international agencies, and participated in forums on rural development. But he never lost touch with the grassroots. He continued visiting all the network centers regularly, getting to know each educator, following the students' progress. "How do you manage to maintain such oversight over such a large project?" asked an organizational consultant. "I don't maintain oversight. I maintain connection," Nathan replied. "Oversight hinders growth. Connection ensures coherence." It was a philosophy he had learned in practice. The more he tried to control every detail of the project, the less efficient it became. When he focused on keeping the values and principles alive, the project grew organically. Sarah was pregnant with the couple's first child. The news brought a new dimension to Nathan's plans. "How will you manage being a father and keeping all this up?" asked Caleb. "I don't know, but I imagine it's similar to what I already do. Caring, teaching, setting an example." "That's true. You're already a father to hundreds of young people. But this one will be special. It's my blood." "They are all special, Nate. Every student who comes through here is special." Nathan knew Caleb was right, but he couldn't hide the emotion of knowing he would be a biological father too. The 13th year brought 2 major developments: the birth of James, son of Nathan and Sarah, and the network's expansion to 15 countries. James was born at the town hospital, but Nathan made a point of bringing him to the center regularly. The boy grew up surrounded by plants, educators, and students of all ages. "He'll grow up understanding that diversity is wealth," Sarah remarked. "And that honest work is the foundation of a dignified life," Nathan added. The international network was growing rapidly, but maintained its quality standards. Each new country received an intensive educator training program based on the methodology developed over the years. "You've created something bigger than any of us," said a UN representative during a visit to the original center. "We didn't create it alone. It was a collective effort, built over many years, with the contribution of hundreds of people." "But your leadership was crucial." Nathan looked at Caleb, who was playing with James on his lap. "Shared leadership is always more effective than individual leadership." "How so?" "Caleb and I have different but complementary skills. Together we can achieve things we couldn't on our own." It was true. Over the years, Nathan and Caleb had developed a perfect partnership. Nathan was more intuitive, emotional, charismatic. Caleb was more analytical, strategic, organized. Together, they covered all the aspects needed to lead a complex project. The 14th year was marked by a special recognition. Nathan received an honorary doctorate from a federal university in recognition of his contribution to social agricultural education. "Dr. Nathan," Caleb joked at the ceremony, "who would have thought the boy kicked out of home would become a doctor?" "A doctor of life," Nathan replied. "The diploma is nice, but what really matters are the lives we've managed to transform." In the lecture he gave after receiving the title, Nathan spoke about the importance of not losing sight of the real goals of any social project. Awards and recognition are important because they give visibility to the work, but they cannot become the main objective. The main objective remains transforming lives. Mrs. Beverly, now 86 years old and more frail, but still lucid and involved, was present at the ceremony. "I'm proud of you, boy," she said after the lecture. "Thank you, Mrs. Beverly. You are a part of all this. I just planted a few little seeds. You're the one who made the forest grow. You planted more than little seeds. You planted values, and values never die." The 15th year brought a difficult decision. Mrs. Beverly was becoming increasingly frail, and Nathan knew he would soon lose his oldest mentor and friend. "Mrs. Beverly, do you want us to do something special when your time comes? I want you to keep doing what you do. It's the best tribute you can give me. But can we do something in your memory? You can create a special program to train young educators, an intensive program that passes on not just techniques, but values. Like the Beverly program?" "It could be," she smiled. "But the important thing isn't the name, it's the content." Nathan and Sarah immediately began developing the program. It would be a 6-month course aimed at training educators capable of replicating the methodology in new territories. "We'll include not just agriculture, but educational philosophy, social psychology, work ethics," Sarah planned. "And personal history," Nathan added. "Every educator needs to understand that their own journey is part of what they will teach." Mrs. Beverly died peacefully on a Sunday morning in the autumn of the 15th year. Nathan was by her side, holding her hand. "Thank you for everything, Mrs. Beverly," he whispered. "Take good care of our garden," were her last words. The funeral was simple, as she had requested, but well attended. Former students from all eras came, educators from across the network, local authorities, neighbors from the region. Nathan gave the farewell speech. "Mrs. Beverly taught us that agriculture is much more than planting and harvesting. It's caring for the land as if it were our mother, and caring for people as if they were our family. She planted seeds of wisdom that will continue to germinate for generations." The Beverly program was launched 3 months later, with the first class of 20 educators from different countries. The course was intensive and transformative, combining technical knowledge with personal development. "You are not just educators," Nathan would say in the inaugural class. "You are multipliers of hope. Every young person you train can train others, creating an endless network of transformation." The 16th year was that of great expansion. The network reached 100 centers spread across 20 countries, with over 5,000 young people trained. Nathan, now 32, was internationally recognized as one of the leading authorities in social agricultural education, but he continued living on the original farm, continued teaching practical classes, continued being the same simple man who had bought a shed for $10. James, now 3 years old, ran freely around the center, known and loved by everyone. He spoke Portuguese, Spanish, and even a few words in Guarani, a language he had learned from students from Paraguay. "He's growing up as a citizen of the world," Sarah commented. "He's growing up as a human citizen," Nathan corrected, understanding that geographic borders do not limit the ability to help people. Caleb had married Ashley, the former student who specialized in medicinal plants. The couple lived on a neighboring farm and had 2 children, Emily, 2 years old, and John, 6 months old. "Our children will grow up together, like we did," said Caleb. "And they will learn from an early age the value of work and solidarity," Nathan added. The 2 brothers, now both married with children, maintained a solid professional partnership and an even stronger personal friendship. The 17th year brought a special invitation. The UN invited Nathan to be a special ambassador for rural education in developing countries. "It's an opportunity to influence public policy on a global scale," the representative explained. "But would I have to move to New York City?" "Not necessarily. It would be a consulting role with regular travel." Nathan discussed the proposal with Sarah. "What do you think?" "I think it's a natural evolution of your work, but it can't mean abandoning what we've built here." "Of course not. In fact, it would be a way to multiply our experience on a global scale." "Then accept it. I support you." Nathan accepted the position, but with clear conditions. He would continue living in the United States, maintain his direct involvement with the network centers, and use the UN role to promote methodologies based on real experiences, not abstract theories. The new position allowed Nathan to influence the creation of similar programs in Africa and Asia. The methodology, born in a rusty shed in a small rural town in the United States, was now a global reference. "Who would have thought that being kicked out of the house at 17 would result in this?" Frank remarked in one of their conversations. "Life has these ironies," Nathan replied. "Sometimes what seems like a tragedy is just the beginning of a great journey." Frank, now 62, had become one of the network's main financial contributors. His regret had transformed into total dedication to the project. "You forgave me a long time ago," said Nathan. "Now you need to forgive yourself." "How?" "By stopping punishing yourself for the mistake you made and focusing on the good you're doing now." It was a lesson Nathan had learned firsthand. Carrying the weight of past guilt prevents building in the present. The 18th year was marked by a new pregnancy for Sarah. This time, it would be a girl who would be named Beverly, in honor of Nathan's mentor. "2 children to raise," said Sarah, caressing her belly. "2 seeds to plant," corrected Nathan, using the language that had become natural to him. James was excited about the idea of having a sister. At 4 years old, he already showed interest in the plants and animals at the center. "Daddy, when I grow up, will I work here too?" "If you want, but you can do anything you want. I want to help people like you do. There are many ways to help people. You'll discover which one is yours." Nathan made a point of not influencing his children too much. He wanted them to have the freedom to choose their own paths. Beverly was born on a spring morning, healthy and vigorous. Nathan felt the same emotion he had felt with James, but now tempered by the experience of already being a father. "Welcome to the world, little Beverly," he whispered, holding his daughter in his arms for the first time. "She'll hear a beautiful story about her namesake," said Sarah. "And she'll create her own beautiful story too." The 19th year was one of international consolidation. The network had stabilized at 120 centers, a number that Nathan and Caleb considered ideal for maintaining quality without losing control. Growing beyond that would be irresponsible, assessed Caleb in a general coordination meeting. "I agree. It's better to have 120 excellent centers than 200 mediocre ones." The network had developed a continuous evaluation system that guaranteed the maintenance of standards. Centers that couldn't maintain quality received special support and only in extreme cases lost their certification. "Our role is not to punish but to support," Nathan would say at regional meetings. "If a center is struggling, it's our responsibility to help." This philosophy of mutual support had become one of the network's strongest characteristics. More experienced centers helped new ones. Veteran educators mentored novice educators. Successful former students returned to encourage current ones. The 20th year arrived with a feeling of a complete cycle. Nathan was 36, Caleb was 34. They were mature men, family men, internationally respected leaders. But when they looked in the mirror, they still saw the boys who had once been kicked out of home and slept on the floor of an old shed. 20 years, said Nathan, looking at the old photo of the shed he kept framed on his office wall. 20 years, repeated Caleb. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, sometimes it feels like a whole lifetime. It was several lives. The scared boy's life, the determined young man's life, the responsible adult's life. And what's the next life? Nathan smiled. The wise man's life, who will keep planting seeds of hope. To celebrate the 20 years, they organized the largest gathering ever held. Former students came from all continents, educators from all eras, partners of all kinds. Over 1,000 people gathered at the original center, which had been expanded especially for the occasion. Nathan gave the main speech, but this time he didn't talk about his personal story. He talked about the future. 20 years ago, 2 boys bought an old shed for $10. Today, over 10,000 young people have passed through our network of centers. 20 years from now, how many will there have been? 100,000? 200,000? But the number doesn't matter. What matters is that each one of them finds here what we found, the possibility of building a dignified life with their own hands. The event lasted 3 days. There were lectures, workshops, presentations of success stories, and strategic planning for the coming years. But the most emotional moment was when Megan, now coordinator of 20 centers, brought a 17-year-old young man on stage. "This is Justin," she said. "He arrived at my center 6 months ago, kicked out of his home with no prospects at all. Today he wants to tell his story." Justin approached the microphone, nervous. I don't speak very well in public, but I want to say that you saved my life." He paused, took a deep breath. "When I arrived at the center, I didn't believe in anything anymore. I thought I'd become a beggar, or something worse. But Mrs. Megan told me, 'You can grow your own food and build your own life.' At first I thought she was lying. Today I know she was telling the truth." The auditorium fell into absolute silence. "I still have a lot to learn, but I already know I'm going to make it. Because if Nathan made it, if Megan made it, if all of you made it, I can make it too." The ovation was emotional and long-lasting. Nathan had tears in his eyes. "This boy is the reason for everything," he whispered to Sarah. "It's for him and for thousands like him that we do this." Sarah squeezed his hand. "And it will continue to be. For our children, for their children, for all the generations to come." The 21st year began with a new goal: to establish a permanent fund that would guarantee the network's sustainability, regardless of external funding. "We need to become self-sufficient," argued Caleb. "We can't depend forever on the goodwill of donors. How will we do that?" "By commercializing products from the centers, creating a brand that represents quality and social responsibility." The idea was to create an international cooperative that would buy products from the centers, vegetables, fruits, preserves, crafts, and market them under their own brand. "Network Harvest Brands," suggested Sarah, "a brand that tells a story of transformation with every product." The project was approved by the coordinators of all the centers. Within 6 months, the cooperative was up and running, selling products in supermarkets across 15 countries. "It's amazing how a brand can tell a story," commented the marketing manager who was helping them. "When people buy Network Harvest Brands, they're not just buying food, they're buying hope." The strategy worked. In 2 years, the cooperative was generating enough resources to keep the entire network operating independently. "We did it," Nathan said to Caleb. "The network is self-sustaining. Now it can survive without us. That was always the goal, wasn't it?" "It was. But it's a little scary too." "Why?" "Because it means our main function is already fulfilled. Now we're expendable." Nathan laughed. "Caleb, do you really think we're expendable?" "I don't know. Are we? Look around. How many young people still arrive here lost? How many educators still need guidance? How many centers can still be improved?" Caleb looked and understood. The project had become self-sustaining but not self-operating. It still needed leadership, guidance, constant innovation. "You're right. It changed our function, but it didn't eliminate our need." "Exactly. Now we're less operational managers and more strategic mentors." The change in function allowed Nathan and Caleb to dedicate themselves more to innovation. They began developing methodologies for specific groups: youth in conflict with the law, refugees, victims of forced labor. "Each group has its particularities," Nathan explained at a conference on social inclusion, "but they all share the basic need for dignity and opportunity." The 22nd year brought an unexpected proposal. The United States government wanted to adapt the network's methodology for public rural schools. "It would be a complete transformation of agricultural education in the country," explained the Secretary of Education. "Would you be willing to collaborate?" Nathan and Caleb considered the proposal carefully. "What would our role be?" asked Caleb. "Pedagogical coordination, teacher training, curriculum development. And would we maintain methodological autonomy?" "Completely. In fact, that autonomy is what interests us." The partnership was established. In 3 years, 200 public rural schools had adopted elements of the network's methodology. "We're influencing public education in the United States," commented Sarah. "It's an impact that goes beyond our centers." "It's the next level of social transformation," agreed Nathan. "It's not just about creating alternatives to the system. It's about transforming the system itself." The 23rd year was marked by an important personal achievement. James, now 10 years old, decided he wanted to study agronomy when he grew up. "It's not because of pressure, Dad," he said. "It's because I really like it." "Are you sure?" "I am. When I see the plants growing, when I see people learning, I feel happy. I want to make other people happy too." Nathan was moved but also worried. "James, you can do anything in life, anything at all." "I know, but I want to do this." "Then let's talk again when you're 16, then you'll be more certain." Beverly, at 4 years old, was still too young for vocational definitions, but she already showed interest in the social aspects of the project. "Dad, why was that boy crying?" "Because he is far from his family, sweetheart. Can I give him a hug?" "You can. Sometimes a hug helps more than any words." Sarah watched her children with pride. "They are absorbing values without even realizing it," she commented. "It's the best way to educate, not through sermons but through examples." The 24th year brought a special tribute. The city hall of the town where it all began decided to name the main rural avenue in the region after Nathan. "Nathan Mendonça Avenue," said the mayor at the ceremony, "in honor of the young man who transformed our region into a world example of social agricultural education." Nathan was embarrassed by the tribute. "It wasn't just me. It was a collective effort. But you were the one who started it. You were the one who had the courage to turn despair into hope." The sign was unveiled in a simple but moving ceremony. Nathan insisted that Caleb also be honored. "Without him, none of this would have happened," he said in his speech. "Nonsense," Caleb replied into the microphone. "Without you, I'd probably be living a completely different life." "What life?" "I don't know. Perhaps more comfortable, more predictable, but certainly less meaningful." It was true. Nathan's decision to stay in the shed had changed not only his life, but Caleb's as well. The 25th year arrived with a feeling of the project's complete maturity. The network functioned like a living organism, growing organically, adapting to new realities, maintaining its original essence. Nathan, at 41, had become a wise man. Not academic wisdom, but the wisdom of life. He knew when to speak and when to be silent, when to lead and when to follow, when to innovate and when to preserve. Caleb, at 39, had established himself as the perfect partner, more analytical than Nathan, more cautious, but equally passionate about the project. 25 years, said Nathan, looking once more at the photo of the original shed. "A quarter of a century," added Caleb. "You know what makes me proudest in all of this?" "What?" "That we never lost our humanity. No matter how much the project grew, no matter how much recognition we received, we remained the same people. I think we grew as people too. Of course. But we didn't change our essence." "What is our essence?" Nathan thought for a moment. "To believe that every human being deserves an opportunity to build a dignified life, and that we can help with that." "Exactly." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of James, now 12, and Beverly, 7. "Dad, can you teach us how to plant cherry tomatoes?" asked James. "Of course, go get the seeds." When the children ran off, Caleb smiled. The next generation is already growing up, and learning values they'll carry for a lifetime. "Do you think they'll continue the project?" "I don't know, and it doesn't matter." "What do you mean it doesn't matter?" "Caleb, our goal was never to build a family empire. It was to create a social movement. If our children continue, great. If they don't, but other young people take over, also great." "True. What's important is that the project continues. The project will continue. It has a life of its own now." And it truly did. The network functioned with its own dynamics, constantly generating new leaders, new ideas, new solutions to old problems. The 26th year was marked by an important decision. Nathan and Caleb decided to begin gradually stepping back from the operational management of the network. "It's not retirement," Nathan clarified in a meeting with the regional coordinators. "It's evolution. We'll focus on research, developing new methodologies, mentoring young leaders." "And who will take over the overall coordination?" asked Megan. "You. The regional coordinators will form a collective board of directors. But what if we need guidance?" "We'll always be available, but you already have the competence to make strategic decisions. The transition was gradual and careful. Nathan and Caleb spent 6 months traveling to all the centers, talking with coordinators, aligning expectations, ensuring the organizational culture was preserved. "How does it feel being consultants instead of directors?" asked Sarah. "Liberated," answered Nathan. "Now we can focus on what we always liked most, the direct work with young people." "And research," added Caleb. "We always wanted to develop more sophisticated methodologies." The change in role allowed them to return to their roots. Nathan began teaching more practical classes at the original center. Caleb dedicated himself to academic research on social agricultural education. "It's funny," Nathan commented during one of these practical classes, "the more the project grew, the more I missed direct contact with the students." "Why?" asked an 18-year-old, newly arrived at the center. "Because this is where everything makes sense. It's seeing you learn, grow, discover your capabilities that I remember why we started all this." The student smiled. "Can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course. Do you regret anything?" Nathan stopped working the soil and looked at the young man. "I regret many things. Mistakes I made, opportunities I missed, words I said or failed to say." "But do you regret staying in that old shed?" "That one, never. It was the best decision of my life. Even after being kicked out of home. Especially because I was kicked out of home. That's what forced me to discover what I was capable of." The young man became thoughtful. "I was kicked out of home too, that's why I'm here." "And how do you feel?" "Scared, but also, I don't know, hopeful." Nathan smiled. "That's exactly how I felt. Fear and hope at the same time. And it worked out. It worked out better than I ever imagined. Then it will work out for me too." "It will. I'm absolutely certain." The 27th year brought a new generation of leaders. Coordinators who had been former students from the early years were now training their own successors. "It's beautiful to see the continuity," commented Sarah. "Each generation passes on what it learned to the next." "And each generation adds something new," observed Nathan. "That's how projects stay alive and relevant." James, now 14, had become a mature and thoughtful young man. He remained interested in agronomy, but also showed a talent for leadership. "Dad, can I teach classes to the younger kids?" "What kind of classes?" "About plants, about caring for the land, basic stuff." "Of course you can. But remember, teaching is a big responsibility." "I know. That's why I want to start slow." Nathan was proud. James was naturally developing the same characteristics that had made the project work: humility, responsibility, a desire to help. Beverly, at 8 years old, had become the darling of the centers. Always friendly, always concerned with the well-being of others, always willing to help. "She has the soul of a leader," observed Caleb. "She has the soul of a good person," corrected Nathan, "which is more important than being a leader." The 28th year was dedicated to systematizing all the accumulated knowledge. Nathan and Caleb began writing a book about the network's experience. "It won't be a technical book," Nathan explained to the publisher. "It will be a book about people, about human transformation through work." "Are you going to tell your personal stories?" "We're going to tell hundreds of personal stories. Ours is just one of them." The book took 2 years to complete. It had 500 pages filled with real cases, tested methodologies and reflections on education and social transformation. From Expulsion to Hope, 28 Years Transforming Lives Through Agriculture, Sarah read the final title. "Do you like it?" "I love it. I love." It perfectly summarizes the entire journey. The book launch was an international event. Educators from all over the world came to learn about the network's complete experience. "You've documented something unique," said a professor from Harvard University. "It's not just a success story. It's a manual for social transformation." "That was our intention," Nathan replied, "so that other people could replicate and adapt our experience." The 29th year was marked by an unexpected tribute. The UN decided to create the Nathan and Caleb Award for social agricultural education initiatives. It's the first time the UN has created an award named after people who are still alive, the representative explained. You didn't have to do this, said Nathan, embarrassed. Yes, we did. You created a methodology that is being replicated in 60 countries. You deserve the recognition. The award creation ceremony was in New York City. Nathan and Caleb were accompanied by their families and representatives of the network. This is surreal, whispered Caleb during the ceremony. What's surreal? Being here, at the UN, receiving this tribute. When I think of that old shed... I think of that shed every day, said Nathan. It reminds me of where I came from and why I do what I do. The 30th year arrived with a feeling of a complete cycle, but also of a new beginning. Nathan was 46, Caleb was 44. They were mature, experienced men, recognized worldwide. But when they visited the original shed, preserved as a memorial, they still saw themselves as the scared boys who once slept on its floor. 30 years, said Nathan, touching the shed's rusty wall. 30 years, repeated Caleb. What would you say to those boys if you could go back in time? Caleb thought carefully. I would say, you have no idea what's coming, but trust the process, trust each other, and never lose the ability to be amazed by the good that exists in people. Nathan smiled. I would say, this old shed will be the start of the greatest adventure of your lives. Embrace the fear, because it will turn into courage. They stood there for a few minutes in silence, each immersed in their own memories. Nate, called a familiar voice. They turned. It was Justin, the young man who had spoken at the 20-year gathering. He was now 27, coordinating 3 centers, and was one of the most promising leaders of the new generation. Justin, great to see you. Do you know today is a special day? Why? Because today marks exactly 30 years since you bought this old shed. Nathan and Caleb exchanged glances, surprised. They had lost track of the days. That's right, confirmed Nathan, checking his phone. Exactly 30 years. And you know what else? Continued Justin. Today the 20,000th student of our network also arrived. 20,000? 20,000 young people who have passed through our centers in 30 years. Nathan felt his eyes fill with tears. 20,000 young people. 20,000 lives touched, transformed, redirected. Wow, whispered Caleb. And do you know who the 20,000th student is? Asked Justin, smiling. Who? Justin stepped aside a little, revealing a 16-year-old girl who was shyly standing behind him. This is Martha. She arrived this morning. Nathan felt a shiver, his mother's name arriving on the exact day of the 30th anniversary. Hi, Martha, he greeted, trying to control his emotion. Hi, she replied softly. Where are you from? From far away. My family kicked me out because they said I was a burden to them. Nathan and Caleb looked at each other again. It was the same old story repeating itself through the decades. And how did you hear about our center? Asked Caleb. A guy from my town, he studied here a few years ago. He said I could start over here. Yes, you can, said Nathan, putting his hand on the girl's shoulder. Here you will learn that you can build your own life. Martha smiled timidly. You really think so? Nathan looked at the shed, then at Justin, then at the girl. I am absolutely sure. You know why? Why? Because 30 years ago, I was exactly in your place. Kicked out of home with no prospects, thinking I was good for nothing. And did it work out? Nathan gestured around, showing the educational complex that had grown around the original shed. What do you think? Martha looked around with wide eyes. All of this started here. All of this started with an old shed we bought for $10. Really? Really? And you know what else? What? Your story is just beginning. 30 years from now, you'll be here telling another young person how everything changed. End of story. This was a fictional story created to touch our hearts. Now, tell us what you thought. Do you believe Nathan made the right decision by staying in the shed? We would love to read your opinion on this journey of transformation. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories.